Get out! Who let this black woman in? This is a bank, not a slum!
His face was full of contempt.
Sir,
Iris stopped.
I'm here to discuss a trust.
Shut up. You're all the same. Always begging, delusional. Get out before I call the police.
I have papers.
Papers?
He snatched the file from her hand and crushed it under his shoe.
A fool like you can't read.
Iris didn't fall. She slowly looked up at the portrait of the founder hanging behind him. A gilded nameplate. Grant. The very name he was standing under. His face turned pale. He had no idea what was about to happen. Let me take you back to the beginning. First Union Heritage Bank wasn't just any bank. It was the kind of place that made you feel poor the second you walked in. The floors were Italian marble, polished so clean you could see your own reflection staring back at you. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings that stretched 3 stories high. The air smelled like leather and old wood and money. The kind of money most people would never touch in their lifetime. The flagship branch sat on South Tryon Street in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina. It had been standing there since 1952. And if you walked through those heavy glass doors, the first thing you'd notice, before the chandeliers, before the brass fixtures, before the velvet ropes separating the premium clients from everyone else, was a row of oil portraits lining the east wall. Former presidents, board chairmen, executives in dark suits with serious faces. But the biggest portrait hung right at the center. A tall black man in a 3-piece suit, hands clasped in front of him, eyes calm and dignified. Beneath the frame, a gold nameplate read, Elijah Grant, Founder, 1952. Most employees walked past that portrait every single day without reading the name. It was just decoration to them, background noise. They had no idea what that name meant. And on this particular Tuesday morning, that ignorance was about to cost one of them everything. Iris Grant arrived at 9:47 a.m. No driver, no entourage, no designer bag or diamond earrings. She wore a simple linen blazer over a white blouse, dark slacks, and flat shoes that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a low bun. She carried a worn leather portfolio tucked under her arm, the kind you'd find at a thrift store, not a luxury boutique. Nothing about her screamed wealth. Nothing about her demanded attention. And that was exactly the point. Iris was the granddaughter of Elijah Grant, the man in that portrait. She was also the current chairwoman of the Grant Family Trust, which held 61% of the bank's shares. In simple terms, her family owned the building, the brand, and every desk inside it. But Iris didn't advertise that. She never had. Once a year, she picked a random branch and visited unannounced. No appointments, no heads-up calls to corporate. She walked in like any ordinary customer to see how the staff treated people when nobody important was watching. Today, it was the flagship branch's turn. She stepped through the glass doors and joined the line. 3 people ahead of her. She waited, hands folded over her portfolio. Patient, quiet. She didn't cut the line. She didn't flash a card. She didn't ask for special treatment. When she reached the front counter, a young black woman named Denise Moore greeted her. Denise had warm eyes and a nervous smile. The kind of employee who genuinely tried to help but was always looking over her shoulder. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you today?" "Good morning," Iris said. Her voice was soft, unhurried. "I'd like to speak with the branch manager about a trust-related account matter, please." Denise blinked. Trust accounts were corporate-level business. Nobody walked into a branch off the street asking about trust accounts. She hesitated, glanced at her screen, then picked up the phone. "Let me call Mr. Thornton for you." 30 seconds later, the glass door to the corner office swung open. Bradley Thornton stepped out. Mid-50s, slicked-back silver hair. A charcoal suit that probably cost more than Denise made in a month. He wore a heavy gold watch on his left wrist and walked like a man who believed the building was named after him. Chest out, chin high. Each step deliberate, territorial, like a predator surveying his domain. He scanned the lobby the way a landlord scans a property. Then his eyes landed on Iris. He stopped. His gaze moved from her face to her blazer, from her blazer to her flat shoes, from her shoes to the worn leather portfolio in her hands. His expression shifted, not subtle, not polite. His upper lip curled slightly. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed into something cold and dismissive. The kind of look you give something unpleasant stuck to the bottom of your shoe. He didn't extend his hand. He didn't greet her. He didn't say, "How can I help you?" He just looked at her and said, "And what exactly do you want?" Iris kept her composure. She was used to rooms that didn't expect her. She was used to eyes that looked right through her. But something about the way Bradley Thornton stared at her told her this visit was going to be different. "I'd like to discuss a trust-related account matter," she said calmly. "I have the proper documentation with me." Bradley didn't move. He stood 5 feet away, arms crossed, feet planted wide on the polished marble. He looked at her the way you'd look at someone who wandered into a private party uninvited. "Trust-related," he repeated, slowly, like he was tasting something sour. "Yes, sir." "You." "Yes." He let out a short laugh through his nose. Not a friendly laugh. The kind that said, "I can't believe I'm wasting oxygen on this." "Ma'am, trust accounts are handled through our corporate office. You can't just walk in off the street and start making demands." "I'm aware of the process," Iris said, still calm, still measured. "I have authorized access. I'm simply requesting to review recent activity logs for this branch." Authorized access. He tilted his head, one eyebrow raised like she'd just told him she could fly. Authorized by whom, exactly? "By the trust itself. It's in the documentation." She held up her leather portfolio. "If you'd allow me to show you." "Hold on." Bradley raised one hand, palm flat, close to her face. Close enough to be a warning. Then he turned, not to Iris, to the lobby. He spoke loud enough for every person in that room to hear. His voice bounced off the marble walls and came back twice as loud. "Folks, I apologize for the disruption. We get this from time to time. Someone wanders in off the street, confused, thinks they're in the right place." He turned back to Iris with a thin smile. "Ma'am, are you sure you're not looking for the check-cashing place on 5th? Or maybe the community credit union down the block? That might be more your speed." He said your speed the way someone would say your kind. Everyone in the lobby heard it. Everyone knew exactly what he meant. A few customers shifted in their seats. An older white couple near the window exchanged an uncomfortable glance. A man in a gray suit stared at his phone, pretending he was somewhere else. A mother near the waiting area pulled her young daughter closer. Iris felt the heat rise up the back of her neck. But she didn't let it reach her face. "I'm in the right place," she said quietly. "Are you, though?" Bradley stepped closer. Close enough that his cologne, sharp, expensive, suffocating, filled the space between them like a wall. Because I've been running this branch for 11 years, and I've never once had someone like you walk in here asking about trust accounts. Someone like you. The words hit like a slap before the real one came. Iris let them sit. Then she unzipped her portfolio, pulled out 2 items, and placed them on the counter. Her driver's license and a trust authorization letter on Grant Family Trust letterhead, complete with the trust's seal, account number, and her full legal name. She laid them side by side, neatly, precisely. "Here's my government-issued identification," she said, "and my authorization letter on official trust letterhead. It contains the account number, my name, and the scope of my access." Bradley looked down at the counter like she'd placed a dead insect on it. He picked up the driver's license first, held it close to his face, tilted it left, then right, squinted at it the way a customs officer examines a suspicious passport, already looking for a reason to reject it. Then he looked at the letter. He didn't pick it up. He leaned over it, barely skimming the first line, and pushed it aside with 2 fingers, the way you'd push away a dirty napkin. "This doesn't prove anything," he said flatly. "It's an official authorization letter on anyone can print a piece of paper, ma'am." He dropped her license back on the counter. It clattered against the marble. "I could print one that says I'm the president. Doesn't make it true." He paused, folded his arms, then smiled, slow, deliberate. The ugliest smile Iris had ever seen. It wasn't a smile at all. It was contempt dressed up in teeth. "And honestly, no offense, but..." He looked through her, like she was nothing. "You don't exactly strike me as someone who knows how to read, let alone manage a trust account." The words landed like stones in still water. Silence thickened across the lobby. Denise, behind the counter, froze. Her fingers stopped on the keyboard. She had already glanced at the authorization letter. She had already seen the name. Her eyes went wide. Her lips parted. She was about to say something, but Bradley caught it. He turned to Denise with a look so sharp it could cut glass. A look that said, "One word and you're done here." Denise closed her mouth, looked down at her screen. Her hands trembled above the keyboard. Iris exhaled slowly. She could feel the eyes of the entire lobby pressing into her back. She could hear the silence, thick, electric, humming with tension. The kind of silence that fills a room when 40 people know something terrible is happening, and not one of them speaks. "Sir," she said, steady, almost gentle, "I am asking you, respectfully, to review my documentation before making a judgment." Bradley ignored her completely. He turned his back to her, faced the lobby, raised his voice like a man delivering a speech. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly why we have protocols. Because every now and then, someone," he waved toward Iris without looking at her, "walks in here with a printed piece of paper and thinks they can help themselves to other people's money." He snapped his fingers. The sound cracked through the lobby like a whip. "That's not banking. That's fraud." The word hung in the air, heavy, poisonous. Fraud. An older woman in the waiting area covered her mouth. A young man near the entrance gripped the door handle. 2 businessmen exchanged a look that said, "This has gone too far." Denise held the edge of her desk so hard her knuckles turned white. Iris stood still, portfolio pressed against her chest. Her face betrayed nothing, but her jaw was clenched and her fingers had gone rigid around the leather. "I am not committing fraud," she said. Quiet, firm. "Well, I don't know that, do I?" Bradley leaned against the counter, casual, smug. He crossed one ankle over the other like they were chatting at a cocktail party. "Tell you what, let me paint a picture for you." He looked her up and down, slow, deliberate, starting at her shoes, working his way up, taking his time, the way a judge examines a defendant before sentencing. No watch, no jewelry, shoes scuffed to hell. That blazer looks like it came from a church donation bin. He pointed at her portfolio. And that bag? My teenage daughter wouldn't use that to carry her gym clothes. Someone in the lobby let out a sharp breath. A woman near the window whispered to her husband, "This is horrible." Bradley heard it. He didn't care. "People who have trust accounts," he said, lowering his voice just enough to sound reasonable. "The most dangerous kind of cruelty, the kind wrapped in calm. Don't show up looking like they're applying for a job at a fast food restaurant. They show up with lawyers, with appointments booked weeks in advance, in cars that cost more than your yearly rent." He leaned forward, close to her face, close enough that she could feel his breath. They show up looking like they belong. He straightened up, adjusted his cufflinks, smoothed his tie. You don't look like you belong anywhere near this building. Not in this lobby, not at this counter, not in this zip code." The air had turned to stone. 40 people frozen. The lobby clock ticked like a heartbeat counting down. Iris took one breath. Long, steady, controlled. "I would like to speak with someone above you," she said. Bradley grinned, wide, full of teeth. The grin of a man who believed he was untouchable. "Sweetheart," he said, "I am the highest authority in this building. There is nobody above me here." He picked up her driver's license and slid it back toward her, slowly, the way you'd return a piece of garbage to its owner. "Now take your little papers and go, before I call someone to make you go." Bradley didn't wait for her to leave. He was done with asking, done with pretending this was still a conversation. He snapped his fingers at the security guard near the entrance, Calvin Hughes, broad shoulders, tight jaw. He'd been watching the whole confrontation unfold from across the lobby without moving a muscle. "Calvin, get this woman out of my bank. Now." Calvin looked at Iris, then at Bradley, then back at Iris. She was standing perfectly still, hands at her sides, portfolio tucked under her arm. Not yelling, not making any kind of scene. The calmest person in the entire building. "Sir," Calvin said carefully, "she doesn't really seem to be—" "Did I ask what you think?" Bradley's face went dark red. A vein throbbed at his temple. "This woman is committing fraud in my lobby, in front of my clients. Do your damn job, or I'll find someone who will." Calvin swallowed hard. He took one reluctant step toward Iris, then stopped. Bradley swung back to face her. His voice dropped, not softer, darker. The kind of tone that sucks the oxygen right out of a room. "You see that?" He jabbed a finger toward Calvin. "Even the security guard doesn't want to get near you. You know why? Because you contaminate everything you touch. You walked into my bank and made it filthy just by breathing the same air as my clients." He wasn't whispering. He wanted every person in the lobby to hear every word. And they did. A woman in the waiting area pressed her hand against her chest. A man near the consultation desk shifted in his chair like he wanted to melt through the floor and disappear. Iris didn't flinch. She placed her portfolio on the counter. Slowly, carefully. Then she pulled out a second copy of the trust authorization letter. She'd kept a spare, and laid it flat on the marble surface. "This is my authorization," she said. Her voice hadn't changed, still calm, still measured. But something underneath had shifted, something harder, something that sounded like the very last chance before a door slams shut forever. I am asking you, one final time, to read this document before you make a decision you cannot take back. Bradley glanced at the letter the way you'd glance at junk mail before tossing it in the garbage. Then he picked it up. For one breath, just one, the lobby went still. Maybe he would read it this time. Maybe his eyes would catch the name at the top. Maybe this whole nightmare would stop right here. He didn't read it. He held the letter up in front of her face, made sure she was watching. Then he gripped both edges and ripped it in half. Slowly, deliberately. The tearing sound sliced through the silence like a razor through fabric. He crushed both halves into a ball and threw it down at her feet. Trash, he said, eyes locked on hers. Garbage, just like the person who carried it in here. The crumpled paper landed on the polished marble, white on white. The Grant Family Trust letterhead still showing through the wrinkles. Iris looked at the paper on the floor. She looked at Bradley. And then she did something that made the entire lobby hold its breath. She knelt down. She lowered herself onto the cold marble floor of the bank her grandfather had built with his own hands 70 years ago. Her knees pressed against the stone. She reached for the crumpled paper. Her fingers worked carefully, smoothing the creases, trying to fit the torn halves together again. Her breathing had changed, shorter, tighter. The only crack in a composure that had held through everything else. That was the moment Bradley Thornton said the words that made every person in that lobby want to be sick. He stood directly over her, arms crossed, chin tilted up. He looked down at her the way you'd look at a stray dog that got into the house and needed to be kicked back out. And he said it loud enough for every corner of the room to hear. Now that's more like it. On your knees. That's where people like you belong. Down on the ground. Where you've always been. Where you'll always be. What followed wasn't silence. It was something worse. It was the sound of an entire room of people realizing they had just witnessed something that could never be undone. Denise covered her mouth with both hands. Tears streamed down her face. She turned away from the counter and pressed her back against the wall. Her whole body was shaking. Calvin took a full step backward. His face was the color of ash. He looked like a man watching a building collapse, frozen, helpless, sick with the knowledge that he should have done something and didn't. An elderly white man in the waiting area, silver hair, navy blazer, probably 70, gripped the armrest of his chair until his knuckles went bone white. He shook his head slowly, over and over. His mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. Near the window, a young woman had her phone raised. Recording. Her hand shook, but the camera stayed locked and steady. A second phone appeared behind her. Then a third near the front door. 3 cameras, 3 angles, 3 pieces of evidence that were about to end a man's career, his freedom, and his entire way of life. Iris collected the torn paper without a word. She rose to her feet. Slowly, deliberately. The way a queen stands after being forced to kneel. Not broken, but burning. She looked Bradley dead in the eyes. Her cheek was flushed where the humiliation had settled under her skin like heat from a flame. But her voice was iron. "You are going to regret this," she said. Not loud, not angry, just certain. The way someone states a fact that has already been decided by forces far bigger than this room. Those 6 words should have broken through. Should have cracked something open inside his skull. should have set off every alarm in his body, screaming at him to stop and step back and think about who this woman might actually be. They didn't. Bradley Thornton was beyond reason, beyond instinct. He was a man standing at the edge of a cliff, staring straight ahead, absolutely convinced he could fly. He stepped closer. He raised his right hand, and he slapped Iris Grant across the face. Full palm, full force. The crack of skin against skin exploded through the marble lobby like a gunshot. It ricocheted off the ceiling, off the chandeliers, off the brass fixtures in the oil portraits and the cold stone walls. It traveled through the bones of every single person in that room like an electric shock. Iris stumbled hard to the side. She grabbed the edge of the counter to keep from falling. Her portfolio hit the floor. Papers scattered in every direction like leaves in a sudden storm. Her hand came up to her cheek, pressing against the burning skin, feeling the heat pulsing underneath, confirming that this had actually just happened. A man had struck her, in front of everyone, in the middle of the day. The lobby exploded. Denise let out a scream, sharp and raw, then choked it back behind her hands. Calvin lunged forward on instinct, not toward Iris, toward Bradley. Then he caught himself and froze, suspended between his gut and his orders. The old man in the blazer shot to his feet. "That is assault!" he roared, his voice cracked with fury. "You just struck that woman! Somebody call the police!" "Sit down and mind your business," Bradley barked over his shoulder. The young woman with the phone spoke clearly across the room. "This is going on every platform tonight. Your life is over." Bradley wasn't listening. He was still pointing at Iris, chest heaving, nostrils flared, riding the rush of a man who had just done something monstrous and still felt righteous about it. "Get out," he spat. "Get out of my bank before I—" He never finished, because Iris lowered her hand from her face, straightened her back, raised her chin, and turned her gaze, slowly, deliberately, past Bradley's shoulder to the wall directly behind him, the portrait wall. Her eyes found the largest frame, dead center, the gold nameplate at the bottom catching the warm chandelier light. Bradley saw her staring. Some reflex, curiosity, or maybe the first flicker of dread he'd felt in his entire life, made him turn around. And there it was. Elijah Grant, founder, First Union Heritage Bank, 1952. A tall black man in a three-piece suit, steady eyes, a face full of the same quiet, unshakable dignity that Bradley had just tried to slap out of his granddaughter. And the name, in polished gold letters beneath the gilded frame, letters that had been hanging on that wall for over 70 years. Grant. The same name on the crumpled letter at his feet. The same name on the license he'd slid back across the counter like garbage. The same name that was seconds away from dismantling every single thing he thought he was. He hadn't put it together yet. Not quite yet. But he was about to. Bradley stared at the portrait, then at Iris, then back at the portrait. His mouth opened. No words came out. Iris straightened her blazer. She wiped the corner of her mouth with the back of her hand. And when she spoke, her voice was so calm it was terrifying. "Do you know whose building you're standing in?" Bradley blinked. His brain was trying to process something it did not want to accept. "What?" he managed. Iris took one step toward him. Just one. But that single step shifted the gravity of the entire room. Bradley actually stepped back. An unconscious retreat, the first one he'd made all morning. That man, Iris said, pointing to the portrait without taking her eyes off Bradley, is my grandfather, Elijah Grant. He founded this bank in 1952 with $40,000 and a dream that people like you would never understand. The lobby was so quiet, you could hear the chandelier crystals trembling. My family still holds 61% of this institution's shares. Every branch, every desk, every dollar that moves through this building moves because my family allows it. She paused. Let that sink into every corner of the room. My name is Iris Grant, chairwoman of the Grant Family Trust. And you just assaulted the woman who decides whether this branch stays open or gets shut down permanently. The words hit Bradley like a freight train at full speed. His face didn't go pale. It went gray. The kind of gray that happens when every drop of blood leaves a man's head at the same time. His hands, the same hands that had torn her letter in half, that had slapped her face, began to tremble at his sides like he had lost all control of his own body. He looked at the portrait again. Elijah Grant, the gold nameplate. Then down at the crumpled letter on the floor. Grant Family Trust. Then at the license on the counter he had tossed back like garbage. Iris Grant. Right there, the entire time. On every document he refused to read. Hanging on the wall behind his head every day for 11 years. He never once looked. His voice cracked in half. The commanding tone was gone. What came out was thin, broken, hollow. I didn't know. She didn't say. He couldn't finish a sentence. His eyes darted around the lobby looking for help, for an exit, for anyone to tell him this wasn't happening. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Denise was still against the wall, with tears on her face. But now something else was in her eyes. Relief. Like a witness carrying a terrible secret, and now the secret had spoken for itself. Calvin stood with his arms at his sides. He wasn't guarding Iris anymore. He was watching Bradley the way you watch a man who just stepped off the edge of a building. And then the front door opened. Sharp heels on marble. Confident. Measured. Eleanor Ashford, Regional Vice President. Silver bob. Navy dress. The kind of woman who could silence a boardroom with a single look. She was here for a routine branch visit scheduled weeks ago. What she walked into was anything but routine. Scattered papers on the floor, a crumpled letter, Denise crying, Calvin blocking the exit, 3 phones still recording, and Iris, standing by the counter, hand on her cheek, blazer wrinkled. The woman Eleanor had met at board meetings and charity galas. Eleanor's face went white, then red, then something beyond color. Controlled fury compressed into a single expression. Ms. Grant. She crossed the lobby in 4 fast steps, her heels cracked against the marble. Iris, what happened here? Iris looked at her, calm, steady, the same composure she'd held through everything. Ask him, she said, and nodded toward Bradley. Eleanor turned to face Bradley Thornton, the man she had promoted 6 years ago, the man she had trusted with the flagship, now standing in his own lobby, pale as paper, trembling, with 3 phones on him from 3 angles. Bradley. Her voice was ice. What did you do? Eleanor, Mrs. Ashford, please. I didn't know who she was. She didn't tell me. She walked in and... Eleanor raised one hand. He stopped instantly, like someone had pulled his plug. You didn't need to know who she was. Each word landed like a hammer. You didn't need her name. You didn't need her title. You needed to treat her like a human being, and you couldn't even manage that. She turned her back on him like he had ceased to exist. 2 phone calls. Corporate security, legal department. Both under 30 seconds. Then she walked to Iris, took a handkerchief from her pocket. Iris pressed it against her cheek. "I am so sorry," Eleanor said quietly. "On behalf of this entire institution, this should never have happened." Iris nodded. She didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't. Behind them, Calvin, the same guard Bradley had ordered to throw Iris out, repositioned himself between Bradley and the lobby, not protecting him, containing him. The power had flipped, completely, irreversibly, like a switch that could never be turned back. 5 minutes ago, Bradley Thornton was the king of this room. He decided who belonged and who didn't. Now he was the one who didn't belong. And every person in that lobby knew it. Bradley Thornton broke. Not slowly, not gracefully. He broke the way a man breaks when everything he built his identity on collapses at once. Fast, ugly, and without a shred of dignity. He stepped toward Iris. His hands were shaking so badly they looked like they belonged to someone twice his age. His voice came out wet and desperate. "Ms. Grant, please, I am so sorry. I had no idea. Can we go to my office and talk about this? Please, if you'll just give me a chance to explain." Iris looked at him the way you'd look at a stain on a wall. Without anger, without pity. Just the cold recognition of something ugly that needed to be dealt with. "You slapped me in front of 40 witnesses and multiple cameras," she said. Her voice was flat, final, like a door slamming shut. "There is nothing to work out. There is nothing to explain." Bradley opened his mouth one more time. Nothing came out. His jaw hung there trembling, like a fish gasping for air that would never come. Eleanor stepped between them. She didn't look at Bradley. She addressed the lobby. "This branch is now under emergency review. Mr. Thornton is suspended from all duties effective immediately." She turned to Calvin. "His key card, his access badge, now!" Calvin walked to Bradley. The same guard who 20 minutes ago had been ordered to drag Iris out was now standing in front of his own boss with an open palm. "Your card, sir." Bradley reached into his jacket with shaking fingers, pulled out his key card and ID badge. He held them for a long moment, held them the way a man holds something that used to define who he was and now means nothing. Then he placed them into Calvin's hand. "Escort him out," Eleanor said. Zero room for discussion. Calvin took Bradley by the arm. Not roughly, not gently, just firmly. The way you handle someone who no longer has any authority over you, and both of you know it. They walked toward the front door. The same glass door Iris had walked through 40 minutes earlier. Quiet, polite, expecting nothing more than basic respect. Now Bradley was being marched through it in the opposite direction. Head down, shoulders slumped. The expensive suit suddenly 2 sizes too big on a man who had completely shrunk inside it. Every eye in the lobby followed him out. Nobody spoke. The silence said everything. The glass door clicked shut behind him. It sounded like the end of a career. Outside, 2 Charlotte Mecklenburg police cruisers were already pulling up to the curb. Someone had called 911 the moment Bradley's palm made contact with Iris's face. Officers stepped out, adjusted their belts, and walked through the entrance. Iris met them at the counter. She filed a formal assault report with the same calm precision she had shown throughout the ordeal. She described every moment, the insults, the torn letter, the slap, without raising her voice once. One officer took notes. The other went behind the counter to review the security footage, his expression growing darker with every minute of playback. "We have everything we need," the lead officer said. He stepped outside. Bradley was detained on the sidewalk in front of the bank he had managed for 11 years. Hands behind his back. 2 officers flanking him. Pedestrians slowed down to stare. A man in a tailored suit, handcuffed outside a bank in broad daylight. The kind of scene that makes every passerby reach for their phone. And they did. Inside, Denise Moore approached one of the remaining officers. Her hands were still trembling, but her voice had found its full strength. She gave a written statement confirming every detail. The refusal to review documents, the racial language, the escalation, the assault. She also named dates of previous incidents she had personally witnessed over the past 2 years. Other customers targeted. Other insults hurled. Other days when Bradley had spoken to people of color with the same venom. But those people hadn't been the granddaughter of the founder. Those people had simply walked out. Quietly. Humiliated. With no one to speak for them and no portrait on the wall to protect them. Denise spoke for every one of them now. By the time the last officer left the building, 3 bystander videos were already live on the internet. The first, filmed by the young woman near the window, carried a caption that would be seen by millions. "Bank manager slaps black woman. Turns out, she owns the bank." Within 1 hour, 50,000 views. Within 3 hours, 200,000. By nightfall, every major news platform in the country was running the story. And Bradley Thornton's face was the thumbnail on every single one. The video didn't just go viral. It detonated. By the next morning, the clip had been shared across every major social media platform in the country. News anchors played it on loop. Talk show hosts broke it down frame by frame. The caption changed from outlet to outlet, but the core was always the same. A bank manager slapped a black woman in his own lobby, and she turned out to be the owner. Comment sections caught fire. Millions of people watching the same footage, feeling the same fury, typing the same thing 100 different ways. How did he not know? How could anyone treat another person like that? And the most common of all, he got exactly what he deserved. Within 48 hours, the bank's board of directors convened an emergency session. They reviewed every second of the security footage. They read witness statements from customers, from Denise, from Calvin, from 2 employees in the back office who heard everything through the open door. The evidence wasn't ambiguous. It wasn't open to interpretation. It was absolute. Bradley Thornton was terminated. Effective immediately. Gross misconduct, assault, racial discrimination, violation of customer service protocols. His name scrubbed from the internal directory before the meeting ended. His nameplate removed from his office door before sundown. 11 years of authority at the bank, wiped out and erased in a single afternoon. But losing his job was just the beginning. The Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office reviewed the footage independently. 3 bystander videos from 3 angles. The bank's own security cameras. 41 written witness statements. The DA held a press conference on the courthouse steps and announced that Bradley Thornton had been formally charged with assault. He was arrested at his home the following morning at 6 a.m. 2 officers at the front door. His wife standing in the hallway in her bathrobe, watching in silence as they walked him out. His mugshot, gray face, hollow eyes, no tie, no slicked back hair, just a broken man staring into a camera, was posted online within the hour. It spread even faster than the original video. People screenshot it, memed it, printed it. It became the face of unchecked authority and racial bias in America. His attorney requested a plea deal. The DA refused. The evidence was too clear, the scrutiny too intense. No quiet resolution, no backroom negotiation, no sweeping this under an expensive rug. Bradley Thornton was going to trial, and the whole country was watching. While the criminal case moved forward, the civil case was already in motion. James Sullivan, attorney for the Grant Family Trust and one of the sharpest civil rights lawyers in the Southeast, filed a federal civil rights lawsuit on behalf of Iris Grant. The suit named Bradley individually for assault and discrimination. It also named the bank's HR department for institutional negligence. And those prior warnings were the most damning part of all. During the investigation, HR records revealed 3 separate formal complaints filed against Bradley over the previous 4 years. 3 different customers, all people of color, had reported being humiliated, denied service, or threatened by Bradley at the flagship branch. All 3 complaints had been reviewed internally. All 3 quietly dismissed, filed away, forgotten, buried under paperwork and indifference. Nobody acted. 3 warnings, 3 chances to prevent what happened. All 3 ignored. Until a man was stupid enough to put his hands on the wrong woman. The media firestorm grew by the day. National outlets sent crews to Charlotte. Cable news covered it non-stop. Podcasts dedicated full episodes. Morning shows and panel discussions dissected every angle: race, class, power, institutional failure, accountability. Social media turned Bradley Thornton into a symbol, not a person anymore. A cautionary tale. A warning about what happens when power meets prejudice and nobody steps in. Except this time, everybody was watching. Iris Grant gave one interview. Just one. She sat in a quiet studio, hands folded, and spoke in the same calm voice she had used in the lobby. "I didn't go to that bank to prove who I was," she said. "I went because every customer deserves basic dignity, regardless of what they look like, regardless of what name is on their license." She paused, looked into the camera. "What happened to me happens every single day. The only difference is I had a portrait on the wall. Most people don't. And that is the real problem we should all be talking about." That quote was shared over 400,000 times in 1 week. Then the other victims came forward. 2 former customers, both black, contacted Sullivan's office within days of the lawsuit being filed. They told their stories publicly for the first time. One was a retired teacher, denied a loan consultation, and told to try a smaller bank that handles people like you. The other was a young entrepreneur, accused of forging documents when opening a business account. Both at the same flagship branch. Both involving Bradley. Both unreported, because neither man believed anyone would take their word over a branch manager in a suit. People were listening now. Every newsroom, every living room. The whole country was paying attention. The criminal trial lasted 4 days. The jury deliberated less than 3 hours. Bradley Thornton was found guilty of simple assault. Sentenced to a suspended jail term, 18 months of mandatory community service, and court-ordered anger management. The judge delivered closing remarks that would be quoted for years. This court does not accept ignorance as an excuse, and it does not recognize authority as a license to dehumanize. The civil suit settled for an undisclosed but substantial amount. As part of the agreement, First Union Heritage Bank, committed to mandatory bias training across every branch nationwide, an independent oversight committee for complaints chaired by a person of color, and a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior at every level. The reforms were real, binding, permanent. And Bradley Thornton, the man who stood over a kneeling woman and told her the ground was where she belonged? His banking license was permanently revoked by the state regulatory board. He would never work in financial services again for as long as he lived. His wife filed for separation 2 weeks after the verdict. No public statement was issued. She did not need one. The video had already said everything there was to say. The last time anyone saw Bradley Thornton, he was walking out of the Mecklenburg County Courthouse alone. No tie, no watch, no swagger. Just a man in a wrinkled shirt staring at the pavement, carrying a manila envelope of court papers, crossing an empty parking lot where absolutely no one was waiting for it. He destroyed his life with one slap. But the truth ran deeper. It wasn't just the slap. It was every word before it, every insult, every assumption. Every time he looked at another human being and decided, based on nothing but the color of their skin, that they didn't deserve to stand in the same room. The slap was just the moment the world finally saw what Bradley Thornton had always been. 6 months later, Iris Grant walked through the front doors of First Union Heritage Bank one more time. But this time, everything was different. No worn portfolio, no quiet anonymity. She wore a tailored navy suit with a gold brooch, a replica of the bank's original logo, the one her grandfather designed in 1952. This time, everyone knew exactly who she was. The lobby had been transformed. White chairs in neat rows, a podium near the portrait wall, a velvet curtain covering something new beside her grandfather's painting. Reporters lined the back. Camera flashes popped like fireflies. Iris was here for the unveiling of the Grant Legacy Initiative, a diversity and inclusion program funded by the Grant Family Trust. Scholarships for underserved communities, mentorship pipelines for young professionals of color entering finance, a permanent community advisory board with real authority to hold leadership accountable. It was not a PR stunt designed to grab headlines for a quarter and then quietly vanish. This program had real teeth, real funding, and Iris Grant personally standing behind every single dollar of it. She stepped to the podium. The room went quiet. My grandfather built this bank because he believed everyone, regardless of where they came from, deserved a place where their dignity would be respected, she said. What happened here 6 months ago was a failure of that promise. Today, we begin to rebuild it. She turned to the velvet curtain, pulled the cord. A new portrait. Iris Grant. Oils like her grandfather's. Same dignified posture, same calm eyes. Beneath the frame, a brass nameplate. Dignity is not negotiable. Applause filled the room. But Iris didn't smile for the cameras. She looked at her grandfather's portrait beside hers, and for one brief second, her composure softened. A granddaughter standing next to the man who made it all possible. In the front row, Denise Moore clapped harder than anyone. Former teller, now assistant branch manager, promoted on Iris's personal recommendation. The woman too afraid to speak that day, but who had spoken every day since. Her statement had been critical evidence in both cases. Iris made sure she knew. Calvin Hughes wasn't there. He transferred branches 2 months after the incident. But he wrote Iris a handwritten letter, 2 pages, postmarked from outside Raleigh. He apologized for not stepping in, for following orders he knew were wrong, for standing still when he should have moved. Iris wrote back, 1 paragraph. You froze. A lot of people freeze. What matters is what you do after you thaw. The bank also announced the Elijah Grant Scholarship Fund. Full tuition for 5 students from underserved communities pursuing business degrees. The first recipients sat in the second row. 3 young women, 2 young men. All first-generation college students. Iris shook each of their hands. The ceremony ended quietly. The cameras were packed up and carried out. The white chairs were folded and stacked against the wall. And slowly, the lobby returned to its familiar rhythm. But something had shifted in this building. Elijah Grant's portrait was no longer alone. His granddaughter was beside him. And those 5 words would greet every person who walked through these doors from now on. Dignity is not negotiable. That's what I want to leave you with. Iris got justice because her name was on a portrait, because cameras were rolling, because her family owned the building. But what about the next woman? The one who walks into a bank, or a store, or a hospital, and gets treated the exact same way. She doesn't have a portrait. She doesn't have a trust fund. She doesn't have a VP walking through the door at the right moment. She just has you, the person next to her, the person behind her in line, the person watching from across the room. The real victory isn't that a powerful woman proved a bigot wrong. The real victory would be a world where the next woman, without her name on any building, gets treated with the same respect. If this story moved you, drop a comment. Have you ever been judged before someone knew your name? If it hit you in the gut, smash that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have not already, subscribe and hit that notification bell. More stories are coming, and the next one is even wilder. Until then, take care of each other, because dignity is not negotiable. Not for anyone. Not ever.
You know what I can't stop thinking about? Power doesn't make you important. How you use it there? Bradley had a title, the outfit, the suit. But the moment he opened his mouth, all of that meant nothing. Because power without decency, that's just cruelty with a name tag. And here's the thing, it's easy to be kind to people above you, your boss, your client, someone you need something from. But how do you treat the person you think can do nothing for you? The stranger in line, the woman at the counter with no designer bag, no last name you recognize. That's a green test. That's the way your character shows up. Not when people are watching, but when you think nobody is. And if you've ever been on the other side of that, walk into a room and felt eye cutting through you before you even said a word, hear me on this. Their judgment is not your truth. You don't need a portrait on the wall to deserve a basic respect. You never did. Every person you meet is carry a story you know nothing about. You don't get to decide their worth, and neither does anyone else. Have you ever been treated like you were invisible by someone who didn't bother to learn your name? Tell me about it in the comments. Share it if it meant something to you. Subscribe, hit that bell. Dignity is not negotiable. Not for anyone. Not ever.